Okay. Jahmyr Gibbs had just got a ridiculous comparison. And I mean, two players that might be two of the best to ever do it. And this comparison wasn't from, a talking head on ESPN. This comparison wasn't from me. Okay. This comparison wasn't from somebody outside the organization. In fact, this comparison was made by the man himself, Brad Holmes. And he was on the Peter Schrager podcast. He was on the Peter Schrager podcast, and he said this about Gibbs. This is nuts to me. When I first got with the Rams in 2003, Marshall Faulk was still there. And I was a huge Marshall Faulk guy, just kind of seeing what he does in both phases. And just from a scouting standpoint, when Christian McCaffrey came out, he was the last guy that I was like, holy cow, this guy can run routes like a slot receiver, but also run it. So you start getting reminders of those players. Okay. He said, I'm not sitting here saying Jahmyr Gibbs is those players, but he's just a special weapon like that. We have a lot of excitement and optimism. So your GM, who just decided to use the 12th pick, who admitted that he would have been ready to take Gibbs with the 6th pick, meaning over Bijan Robinson, is now comparing Jahmyr Gibbs to two of the greats, a current great and one of the best to ever do it in Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk was really good. So I went back and I'm like, let's look at this. Let's look at the numbers from each of these guys in college and compare what they did. Now, the big difference between Jahmyr Gibbs and Marshall Faulk and Christian McCaffrey is something very simple. Gibbs did not have as many touches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare their third year, their junior year. All of them went to school for 3 years. All of them left after 3 years. Marshall Faulk was at San Diego State. Christian McCaffrey at Stanford. And Jahmyr Gibbs spent 2 years at Georgia Tech and then his third year at Alabama. So let's first compare Faulk with Gibbs. So Marshall Faulk ran the ball 300 times to Gibbs 151. Gibbs had exactly half the carries. Marshall Faulk averaged 5.1 yards per carry for 1,530 yards. Gibbs averaged 6.1 for 926. Faulk had 47 receptions, which he turned into 644 yards for an average of 13.7 yards per catch. Gibbs had 44 catches, just 3 shy of that, for 444 yards for an average of 10.1 yards, which he turned into 3 touchdowns. What about Christian McCaffrey? Now, I told you I'm using their junior year. I'm not using Christian McCaffrey's ridiculous year of 2015. He only played in 11 games in 2016. He had 253 carries, same 100 more than Gibbs, which he turned into 1,600 yards at 6.3 yards per carry. Gibbs was at 6.1. So as far as yards per carry goes, he's right there. And Faulk was doing it in the WAC, right? If the WAC even existed back then. Christian McCaffrey, who we view as this just ridiculous receiving running back, he played at Stanford, a much more pro-style offense. And by pro-style offense, I mean old pro-style offense, like back in the 90s, where running backs didn't get involved as much. They found a way to involve him. He got 37 catches, turned it into 310 yards at 8.4 yards per carry. Gibbs, again, 44 for 444 at 10 yards per attempt and 3 touchdowns. Here's one thing that I will say that McCaffrey and Faulk did much better at. They got into the end zone more. They got into the end zone a lot more. Faulk got into the end zone running it 21 times, McCaffrey 13 times, Gibbs 7 times. In fact, Gibbs only had 10 total touchdowns, and this isn't unusual for him in his career there because both Faulk and McCaffrey didn't come out in goal line situations. Gibbs did. So there is a little bit of a difference there. When Marshall Faulk came out, this is nuts to me, in 1991. He was the 2nd overall pick. I said 91. It was 1994. He was the 2nd overall pick in the draft that year. the second overall pick. Christian McCaffrey was the 2017 NFL draft, and he was the 8th overall pick. And he came out at 5'11", 202. Jahmyr Gibbs is 5'11", 200, and he's the 12th overall pick. There is a comparison to be made here that Gibbs can compare to McCaffrey. There is a comparison to be made here that Gibbs can compare to Marshall Faulk. Size-wise, he's there. Speed-wise, he's faster. Elusiveness, I give that to Faulk all day. All right. I would give Faulk as the most elusive, McCaffrey as the best pure route runner, and Gibbs the pure explosiveness and speed and big playability. And by big playability, I mean straight line speed. And he, don't get me wrong, he has good wiggle. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, you can't put him ahead of those guys, but we know he's also faster. So, yeah, this comparison was made. Is there some light to it? Maybe. I guess what I'm saying is don't shy away from drafting Jahmyr Gibbs in your fantasy football drafts. If the GM is this high on him and the coaching staff is this high on him and that's what they believe, they're willing to use him fast. If they were willing to immediately get rid of DeAndre Swift, that means they are immediately willing to go to Jahmyr Gibbs. So when you see the numbers that he had his senior year at Alabama in 12 games with 151 carries with 44 receptions, I think that 150 carries, maybe 175, 40 to 50 catches is a very reasonable expectation within this Detroit Lions offense. The question is, I mean, obviously the running is going to be hampered a little bit as far as average yards go. So do I think he can be 1,000 yards from scrimmage guy rookie year? Absolutely. Do I think he can get that 1,500 or that 2,000 that Swift was always saying he wanted but was always too hurt to do? That's a little lofty, but if he wants to end up being like a McCaffrey, if he wants to end up being like a Faulk, those are the things that he's going to have to do. Here's what we do know. Running backs can be day one big time influence on teams. So I wouldn't count them out. I wouldn't count him out, and being able to learn this offense quickly. I think David Montgomery is going to obviously take some of those goal line carries. He's going to take a lot of the running down carries, but I think you'll be surprised at how much they run the ball with Gibbs because they want to stay multiple on offense when he's on the field. I really do think you're looking at Gibbs kind of like you had Kamara in his first 3, 4, 5 years in New Orleans, where they gave him more and more and more runs, and he was usually running for 6, 7, 8, 900 yards. But he was getting almost 1,000 yards in receiving, just going nuts on that end of it. So really excited to see what he can do. It's like Austin Eckler on steroids, man. So anyways, there we go. We'll see you on the next one. That's my comparison, by the way. And hope you guys enjoy the channel, and can't wait for preseason. Can't wait for training camp. Can't wait for football season. Let's go. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Bye.